Forget steroids, forget brutal diets. What if science could give you huge muscle gains and extreme fat loss without the side effects? In this video, we explore the revolutionary new drugs from Regeneron that may change bodybuilding, fitness, and even health forever. Welcome to the aesthetic revolution.
All right, so we all know that feeling, right? Trying to build some muscle, lose some fat, you're in the gym, you're watching your food, and honestly, year after year just feels like you're fighting physics, just clawing for tiny changes.
It's the classic body comp struggle. It seems like our bodies aren't really set up to do both things well at the same time, not naturally anyway. You gain muscle when you eat more, lose fat when you eat less, and trying to make both happen effectively. It's usually super slow, super inefficient for most people.
Yeah, and that frustration, it's real. But what if? What if the basic rules here were about to change? Like really change? What if getting those big body composition results became, I don't know, accessible in a totally new way?
Yeah.
That's the wild idea popping up in the stuff we've been looking at.
Specifically research and a lot of talk around it about new drugs coming out of Regeneron Pharmaceuticals. We've really gone through the data, the commentary. And look, if even part of this pans out like they're suggesting, the word staggering doesn't quite cover it. It's huge.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Let's do a deep dive into what these sources are actually saying about the future of muscle gain and fat loss, and what it could mean for you listening. So before we jump into the future stuff, let's just quickly set the scene with why it's so tough right now.
Yeah.
We mentioned how hard it is to get, properly jacked and lean together.
Absolutely. And historically, if people wanted to seriously speed up muscle growth, the main tool has been anabolic steroids.
Yeah.
And yeah, look, they definitely work for packing on muscle, no question. But as these sources really lay out, they come with a pretty big, often nasty downside.
Right, you're talking about that whole list of androgenic side effects.
Exactly that. Because, the sources make a key point. Steroids weren't really designed just to build muscle. Their basic function was to make mammals more male, to masculinize. So yeah, you get the muscle growth, but you also get all these other effects pushing towards that male phenotype, which often people don't actually want. For guys, that can be things like, losing hair, acne, more body hair, messing up your cholesterol, potential liver issues, maybe more aggression or anxiety, prostate issues, testicular shrinkage.
And for women, those same masculinizing effects can be even more, unwanted from an aesthetic point of view.
Definitely. A deeper voice, clitoral enlargement, periods getting disrupted, facial hair. It's powerful for muscle, yes, but it carries a lot of baggage because of what it fundamentally is.
Okay, so that's one side. Then you got the other side, the modern weight loss drugs like semaglutide. Huge deal for losing weight, right?
Oh, absolutely huge. And they work incredibly well for fat loss, mostly by crushing your appetite, right? So people can stick to really big calorie deficits pretty easily. The catch, though, the unintended consequence, is that when you're in that kind of massive deficit, especially if you're not doing anything else specific, a lot of the weight you lose isn't just fat, it's muscle too, sometimes significant amounts.
Ah, right. So you get leaner on the scale, maybe, but you could be losing strength, losing that metabolically active tissue muscle provides. Different kind of trade-off.
Precisely. Fantastic for shedding fat pounds, but often takes a big chunk of muscle with it, which isn't really the goal if you want better body composition, that muscle-to-fat ratio, not just a lower number on the scale.
Okay, so that perfectly sets up the problem. It's hard to do both naturally. Steroids build muscle, but have all those side effects. Weight loss drugs shed fat, but can cost you muscle. And this is exactly where this Regeneron research seems to be aiming, right at the heart of that whole problem.
It really does feel like it. The really exciting thing highlighted in these sources is Regeneron's work on what they're calling non-androgenic anabolics. The idea being build muscle, sure, but without all those masculinizing side effects we just talked about with steroids.
And they actually mentioned a couple of specific drug names. They've got a mouthful, these names.
They are, yeah. The main ones discussed are travagramab and garetmab. The source we looked at even had a bit of fun suggesting they might be named after the researchers, like maybe Trevor and Garrett.
Huh. Trevor and Garrett's miracle drugs. I like it. Okay, I'm using that. So how do Trevor and Garrett's drugs actually work? What's the mechanism here?
It's actually pretty clever, the mechanism. So travagramab, that's a myostatin antagonist, and garetmab is an activin A antagonist. Basically, think of myostatin and activin A as natural limiters or brakes on how much muscle your body will normally build.
Like governors on an engine.
Exactly. Your body could build more muscle than it usually does, but these proteins act like signals saying, okay, that's enough. They put a cap on it.
Okay, so they limit your natural potential.
Right. They suppress muscle growth. So what these new drugs do is they block those proteins, they antagonize them. It's like taking the foot off the brake. They're uncapping your body's built-in potential to add muscle. It's not like steroids adding a foreign signal. It's removing the natural stop signals.
Okay, that sounds very promising just in theory. But the sources we looked at, they get into some actual preclinical data that makes it sound, frankly, revolutionary.
They really do. They go into detail on a pre-stage 1 clinical trial. This was done on non-human primates, monkeys. And the setup alone is kind of interesting. They were apparently putting these monkeys under anesthesia periodically for DEXA scans, to get really precise body composition measurements.
Wow, okay. I'm picturing tiny monkeys getting DEXA scans. And the results, yeah, they're measured in grams because they're small animals, but looking across the groups over 20 weeks, the differences were huge, weren't they?
Huge, rapid, and clearly measurable, yes. So they had 4 groups of these monkeys, and importantly, all of them were on a calorie-restricted diet. They were all dieting.
Okay, let's break down those 4 groups. What happened over the 20 weeks?
Okay, group 1, the control. The natty monkeys, just dieting. Over 20 weeks, they lost about 400 grams of fat. And like you'd expect on a diet, they lost a little bit of muscle, around 15 grams.
Right? Seems reasonable. Decent ratio, modest fat loss. Pretty standard diet result.
Totally standard. Okay, group 2, semaglutide only. Now, like we said, semaglutide helps create a bigger deficit, so they lost more fat, about 700 grams.
Okay, almost double the fat loss.
Yep. But that bigger deficit with no specific muscle-sparing help meant they lost way more muscle. Around 100 grams of muscle lost.
Okay, so better fat loss than natty, but that muscle loss trade-off is much worse.
Yeah.
Confirms what we thought.
Exactly. Now, buckle up for group 3. This is trevogrumab, only just the myostatin blocker. Same diet. These monkeys lost approximately 1,300 grams of body fat.
Whoa, wait, 1,300? That's like, what, triple the natty group? And way more than the semaglutide group, too.
Triple the natty, almost double semaglutide's fat loss. Just a dramatic jump. And the really interesting part, how much muscle did they lose while dropping all that fat?
Okay.
About 15 grams. The same tiny amount of muscle loss as the natty monkeys who only lost 400 grams of fat.
No way.
Yeah. The source explicitly points this out, saying the drug alone seemed to basically nullify the muscle loss effect you'd normally see from the huge deficits that drugs like semaglutide enable. That alone is kind of huge.
Okay, just one of these drugs massively boosts fat loss and protects muscle, even in a big deficit. That's already kind of mind-bending.
It absolutely is. But then you get to group 4, the triple threat, the combo therapy. This was semaglutide plus trevogrumab plus garetmab, so hitting appetite, myostatin, and activin A. These monkeys lost the most fat, around 1,400 grams, just slightly more than trevogrumab alone. But remember, this is nearly 4 times the fat loss of the control group just dieting.
4 times the fat loss.
Oh, okay.
Oh, what happened to the muscle? Please don't tell me they lost even more muscle with that combo.
This is the part where the source literally says this is insane. This is insane. While on a calorie deficit, losing almost 4 times the fat as the control group, this combo group didn't just preserve muscle, they didn't just lose less muscle, they gained muscle. Around 450 grams of muscle gain over 20 weeks while dieting.
Hold on. Gained muscle and lost a record amount of fat at the same time in a deficit. The sources didn't even mention resistance training for these monkeys, did they?
Not mentioned. Just the diet and the drugs, gaining significant muscle while losing massive amounts of fat simultaneously in a deficit. It turns everything we thought we knew upside down.
How does that work biologically?
That's the question, right?
Yeah.
It suggests these pathways, myostatin and activin A, are just such powerful natural brakes on muscle growth that when you remove them both, muscle protein synthesis can actually ramp up significantly, maybe even fueled by all the fat being mobilized. Even when calories are restricted, the source is just emphatic. This is insane. It points to a totally different reality for body composition.
Okay, wow. That primate data it's genuinely jaw-dropping. But
Okay.
all right, the big question for everyone listening has to be, what does this mean for us? For humans?
Yeah.
How likely is it that this stuff translates? And what would it even look like?
Well, the encouraging thing is that primate biology, especially around muscle growth pathways, is pretty close to human biology. So the odds of these results translating are considered quite high. And importantly, the sources confirm these aren't just theoretical. Stage 2 human clinical trials are actually ongoing right now. They're already testing this in people.
Okay, that's significant. Human trials are happening. So if it translates similarly, How could this change things for, say, an average person trying to get in better shape?
The sources use this great analogy to illustrate it. Imagine you have an identical twin. Let's say you're both starting at maybe 200 pounds, 20% body fat, and you both decide you're going to diet for 5 months.
Okay, got it. Twin A and Twin B. My twin A, does the standard, natty approach. Good diet, maybe some exercise.
Right. So your natty twin, Twin A, based on extrapolating that monkey data to human scale, over 5 months, they do well. They probably lose around 8 pounds of fat, and maybe they lose less than a pound of muscle, which is good preservation. So they end up around 192 pounds, maybe 16.5% body fat. They look better, definitely made progress. People might notice. It's a solid, typical result from a good diet.
Yeah, achievable, respectable, but not exactly earth-shattering.
Exactly. Now you, Twin B, you get the combo therapy, semaglutide plus Trevor and Garrett's magic drugs, trabigramab and GarrettMab. Same 5 months, same starting point. Again, extrapolating from those ProMate results. You lose about 28 pounds of fat.
28 pounds, okay, that's huge fat loss. What about muscle?
And you gain approximately 9 pounds of muscle.
Wait. Lose 28 pounds of fat, gain 9 pounds of muscle in 5 months while dieting.
Yes. So you end the 5 months weighing less, maybe around 181 pounds. But because of that massive fat loss and muscle gain, your body fat percentage drops to roughly 6.5%. The source even frames it like, Scott, make this make sense. It doesn't. Think about the visual difference between you and your identical twin after just 5 months. It wouldn't just be noticeable, it'd be absolutely radical. You'd look like a completely different person.
That's not just improvement, that's a transformation. A complete physique overhaul in months.
It really is. The source is pretty direct, calling it a completely different era of body composition enhancement. It potentially just rewrites the rules on what's possible and how fast you can get there.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting then. If these trials keep looking good, if these drugs actually get FDA approved, the source throws out a guess, maybe around 2027, 2028. What are the bigger picture implications? This feels like it goes way beyond just one person's result.
Oh, the potential ripple effects discussed are massive. First off, side effects. The whole point is minimal or zero androgenic stuff, unlike steroids. The main potential side effect they even theorize about is maybe increased hunger because you're building muscle so fast. But that's exactly why the combo includes something like semaglutide to manage appetite, so you can potentially balance it out. The hope is a much, much cleaner side effect profile.
So ideally, all the muscle gain, maybe even better fat loss, without that whole steroid downside list we talked about.
That's the goal, the explicit aim of this non-androgenic approach. And beyond just aesthetics, think about the health impact. Gaining muscle is just incredibly good for you metabolically. Better insulin sensitivity, better blood lipids, lower risk for so many chronic diseases. The sources mention something like over 20 distinct health benefits tied just to having more muscle mass.
So it's not just about looking good, it could be a major health intervention too.
Powerful one, yeah. And another huge potential implication the source brings up, steroids might just become obsolete for most physique goals. They predict steroids could be dead in the water, completely outclassed for anyone primarily focused on improving their body composition, because these new drugs could offer better results with far fewer downsides.
Wow.
Steroids might stick around for very specific strength goals in some sports, maybe. Or people might just use basic TRT for general well-being. But for getting shredded and muscular, these new therapies could just take over completely.
That's a massive prediction.
Yeah.
But honestly, when you line up that primate data against the known issues with steroids, it's hard to dismiss.
It is, and the sheer power of these things could even change how people train. If these drugs are potent enough to build or maintain muscle, even in areas you're not directly training hard, think about what that allows. The sources speculate you could use a moderate dose of these drugs and then focus all your intense training effort only on the specific show muscles you want to really sculpt, like forearms, biceps, shoulders, upper chest, calves.
Like targeted sculpting amplified by the drugs.
Exactly. Creating a really customized, radical physique. And think about female athletes, too. This could open the door for them to achieve significant muscle development without the unwanted masculinizing effects that have always been a major issue or deterrent with traditional methods.
Okay, what about for regular folks? People who feel like they drew the short straw genetically, or older people fighting muscle loss, or just anyone who's been plugging away for years with slow progress.
This might be the most profound impact for the average listener, honestly. So many people hit the gym consistently, eat reasonably well, and just see minimal result. It's frustrating. It feels like fighting biology. These drugs could potentially change that whole equation. Imagine putting in the effort and actually seeing dramatic, consistent progress week after week. The gym would suddenly feel incredibly rewarding again, wouldn't it? Because your effort gets amplified like crazy. It would make sense again to really hit it hard.
So instead of just trying to slow down the decline or break through tiny plateaus, you're actively, rapidly transforming.
Exactly. And the sources even wonder if this might increase serious gym attendance, not decrease it. If the potential gains are that huge, motivated people might train harder than ever. And think bigger picture. If you have a population that's generally carrying more muscle and less fat, the positive impact on public health, on reducing chronic disease burden, potentially saving healthcare systems billions, it's enormous.
The sources really do paint this picture of a potential aesthetic revolution, making the kind of body people dream of much more attainable for many more people. So, okay, let's bring this back home to you, the listener. This isn't some, 20 years away sci-fi thing about super soldiers. The sources are saying human trials are happening now. Potential availability could be just a few years away, or maybe 2027, 2028.
Right. It means the real possibility of making these dramatic, healthy body composition changes, losing serious fat while gaining serious muscle, together could become a reality for a much wider slice of the population than ever before. It could fundamentally change your own fitness journey, what you think is possible for yourself, really regardless of where you're starting from, your age, your genetics.
It's like a sneak peek at what the future of changing your own body might actually look like.
Yeah.
Potentially flipping decades of this is just how it is on its head.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating here isn't just the potential scale of the change, but the speed these things are developing. Plus, the sources kind of hint, with tools like AI driving drug discovery now, who knows? Future versions could be even more effective, even safer. We might be looking at continuous, rapid improvements in how we can optimize body composition healthily.
Which I guess leads to a pretty big final question for you to think about. If getting significantly more muscular and dramatically leaner becomes much, much easier, faster, and safer, how might that change things? How might it change your own motivation to exercise or eat well? How might it shift what society sees as an ideal or even achievable physique? Or just your whole perspective on health and fitness when those big physical goals suddenly seem way more within reach? Definitely something to chew on.